I need to give you one of my personal pet peeves, which is that you're looking through the list of talks, and you read the abstract, and you're like, this talk's going to be amazing. And so you sign up, you walk in the door, and you go to the talk, and your guy starts getting through his wind-up, and you're like, okay, this is great. And then you check your watch, and 10 minutes goes by, and they're not into their content. You check your watch, and 10 minutes goes by, and you're like, I'm missing 3 other amazing talks. So I'm going to tell you exactly what this talk is about and what it's not about. That way, if you decide this is not for you, you can go do something else. So this is a defense talk. I'm not dropping any sexy Active Directory, 0 days, nothing like that is taking place here. This is very, very much of a blue team talk geared towards blue team people in the enterprise. Blue team. Red teamers, I'm sorry, you're welcome, but seriously, get out. No, for real. So, this, like I said, this is geared towards the enterprise. If you are a startup or if you're a small company, this is hopefully you will find some good content here, but my hope for you is that a lot of what I'm going to tell you has already been done and taken care of because you're a startup and you've already thought about Active Directory security, okay? So, this is also focused intentionally on domain administrator accounts. I'll get into the reason why in a little bit. Okay, the methodology that I'm going to give you is you can apply to all kinds of different elevated access, but this is particularly geared towards DA accounts. Okay, that's something important to consider. This will not solve all of your Active Directory security problems. If you log on to a DC and you are checking your email and you are clicking links, I can't help you. Please don't do that, other than to say don't do that because that's stupid, okay? So yeah, don't do that. One thing I have to tip my hat to all the other very, very smart AD engineers that are here. I watched Carlos Perez's talk yesterday. It was outstanding. I watched Chris Campbell's talk. I was terrified watching that thing. I'm like, I have to change all my slides now. So, but a lot of really, really awesome people doing a lot of neat things. So I am the only one stupid enough to come to a hacker conference and talk about defending Active Directory. So this is going to be interesting. So bear with me. Let's talk about goals. I don't like going into a talk and not having people know exactly what they're in for. That's just something that's important to me. So I have very, very specific goals for this particular talk. The first goal is that I want to provide content that is immediately useful to you regarding the defense of your domain administrator accounts as well as your domain controllers. Like I said, this is geared towards the enterprise. And making changes in the enterprise when it comes to just about anything is like steering the Titanic. It's horrible, right? You got to submit a change request to your change approval board. Your manager has to approve it. Your director has to approve it. Blah, 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 blah. Red tape. It's awful. Okay. With that in mind, I want to give you some things that you can do and things that you can accomplish in a month or less. And this is aggressive on my part, knowing that I'm talking to people who work on Active Directory defense in the enterprise. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about are specific ways, things that you can do to bring tighter security around some of your most sensitive accounts in a very, very simple way. Okay? It'd be so easy for me to say something like, what operating system are you running? Well, I'm running Windows 2000. Upgrade to 2012. I could say that, but that's a major, major undertaking, okay? And I don't like that, okay? Theoretical talks and talks that are all about the latest techniques to get in the minutiae of, memory management, all that kind of stuff. That's awesome, but I like talks that are extremely tangible and accessible and practical and give you stuff that you can take back to your enterprise and work on tomorrow. Okay? That's what this is about. So, just a little about me. I am a consultant at Synercom, which is a smaller IT shop. We do penetration testing. We also deliver IT solutions. This is going to be weird for me because I just switched jobs Monday. So, a lot of if I refer to my company, I'm talking about my previous company, so this is odd for me. My previous job, I was a Active Directory security engineer. I managed PKI, managed group policy, things like that for a Fortune 500 company. So I did that for a lot of years. So passions include I love development. If I'm not working on AD, I love writing code in C# or PowerShell or Python. Carlos Perez said something yesterday that really hit home with me, which is that whatever and I know I'm going to screw this up, but conform to the task, right? So if you are working in a particular problem and PowerShell is best suited for that, use PowerShell. If Python is best suited, use Python. I love that. That really resonates with me. Okay, I'm very passionate about InfoSec. I love helping other people in their InfoSec journey. And when I'm not in front of a computer, I'm downstairs in my wood shop, pushing a jack plane or hammering on a chisel or something like that. I love woodworking. So you can find me on Twitter. I blog on Project 500. I love dropping PowerShell one-liners that help with Active Directory stuff. So check that out. So real quickly, we need to take a survey because this is going to help me. How many of you would say you work in a large enterprise? A large enterprise being 5,000 or more users. Okay, about 50% of you. That's awesome. Okay, how many of you say you work in an old enterprise? This is an interesting question, okay? Okay, you're going to see why we're going to get into this in a little bit. 25 plus years, okay? This will have bearing, I promise you, okay? What's the next question? How many of you work in some kind of AD security? I'm not asking for who's a domain admin or an enterprise admin, though you can admit that if you want. So quite a few of you. Here we go. How many of you have had a pen test sometime in the last 12 months on your domain? Some of you? Red team shows up, and they're like, bam, local admin, bam, servers, bam, domain admin. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. So, my previous company, oh gosh, this can screw me up. My previous company, we decided that we were going to go through a pen test, and we were going to, we hired this teeny tiny little company that's based in Ohio. If I told you who they were, you'd have no idea who I'm talking about. And we hired them. We said, we want you to come on in, and we want you to test our domain. See how far you can get. Okay, there was other parts of the scope to it, but we said, come on in and test our domain, see how far you can get. And a couple weeks goes by, and I get a text from my buddy Scott, who is kind of the liaison between my organization and Trusted Sec. And he said, Jason, you need to go out and check the domain admins OU, or check the domain admins group. And really? Why would I need to do that? Well, some interesting things happen over the course of a couple weeks. Some terrifying and horrible things happen that I was unaware of. And as a domain administrator, if you have never had this moment, this feeling, we need to talk about this, okay? Because this is really important. If you work in Active Directory security, the knowledge and the thought that you are a target is in the back of your mind, okay? I know what it's like to be a domain admin in a very, very large company. What are you doing? You're doing user lifecycle management. You're doing group membership changes. You're doing GPO changes. You're doing all the day-to-day crap of taking care of the enterprise. A red teamer is going to go straight for domain admin. That's exactly what's going to happen, okay? An attacker's going to do that as well, all right? So having this moment was a very interesting revelation to me. And I want to put up a diagram that Matt Weeks, you might follow him on Twitter. He goes by the handle Script Junkie. He put this diagram together. Can you guys see if I laser point? Can you see that? You can. Awesome. Okay. So, what the heck? So, look over here at the start. All right. You're probably not going to be able to read this stuff in the middle, but it doesn't really matter. Basically, this is a network intrusion process. So I'm a bad guy and I'm starting over here with nothing. I go through some attacking stuff over here, and then I get local admin access on a box or two. And then I escalate, and I do some more bad stuff, and then bam, I'm on a server. And then I do some more bad stuff, and this is the goal. Domain admin. Okay? Red teamers know this. Red team, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Okay? Blue team, I'm probably still not telling you anything you don't know, but I need this to come to the front of your mind for the remainder of this talk. Okay? Because, like I said, you are so focused on doing the day-to-day work that the thought that your account, domain admin, the thought that your account is a target is going to be probably over here. Okay? And I need you to bring it here because that's going to be important as we talk about protecting domain admin accounts. Okay, so like I said, this moment and this process for me was critical because I had never really gone through it before. This is the first time this had happened where our domain basically just got owned everywhere, raped and pillaged. It was terrible, okay? And paying attention to this, I had the thought to myself that said, in order to get domain admin on our domain, in order for that to take place, one of our accounts had to have been compromised, or some kind of system-level access had to be taken on our DC. This was interesting to me because now I wanted to know who. All right, now, we'll get into this in a little bit. Through this process, we sat down, we analyzed the attack, we looked at the report, and we came up with a few tips and tricks that we wanted to make public to all of you. Things that hopefully will help you if you have gone through a pen test and you just got repeatedly kicked in the balls. Okay, hopefully these tips and tricks are going to help a little bit. If you have not gone through a pen test, hopefully this will prepare you. Okay, and like I said, 1 month or less, that's my goal. I can't promise it for all of them, but some of them we can. Okay, number 1, 10 tips and tricks. I want you to test your domain admins. What do I mean by test? This is interesting. I am a firm believer that good security does not start with blinky light appliances. Okay, good security starts with good people. You can buy all kinds of the latest rock star, flashy vendor, whatever. It's not going to stop a determined intruder. Okay? You need to start with good people. And I see some of you taking notes. I promise I'll make the slides available after this. Okay? Test your domain admins. John C. Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership. I'm going to say that again. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. It doesn't matter if that's a church, if that's a marriage, if that's a company. It doesn't matter. Each one of you who are in Active Directory security, especially if you're a DA or an EA, you are a leader in one of the most critically important pieces of your company's infrastructure, providing auth and auth services to everybody. Okay? Wrap your head around this. All right? That you are a leader and you're also a target. Hopefully everybody's staying with me so far. To give you an idea of what I mean by testing, I want to tell you a story. I love telling stories. You're going to hear a lot of stories. I want to tell you a story about a young man named Sam. Sam joined our organization a couple years ago, and he came in as an intern. He was wrapping up his degree in comp sci, I think. And he came in as an intern, he stayed for a while, he graduated, and then he became a contractor, and then he did some awesome stuff, and then he became an FTE. And Sam decided that he was interested in Active Directory. He didn't know anything about it. Didn't know anything about AD. And he came to us, came to the DAs, and said, hey, can I start getting involved? Can I start taking on some kind of work? And we're like, sure, yeah, that's great. So you take Sam's account, low priv user, okay? You delegate just a little bit. You give him just a little bit of access. We started bringing Sam to meetings. And we brought Sam to meetings. We said, hey, Sam, can you take this on? Can you take this on? He's like, yeah, sure. He went and did it. And we elevated his access. And we kept doing this until all of us were very, very comfortable with Sam. And then the day came when the DAs and I got together and we said, hey, should we make Sam a domain admin? They're like, yeah, okay. All right, yeah, let's do it. And then we had the thought, let's test him. Let's test him first to see what Sam can do. Because we knew that Sam was a good guy, lovable guy, everybody loves him, but we didn't know how he responded under stress. We didn't know what pressure would do to him of having to send out communications. What if a domain went down? We didn't know how he's going to react to all that. Was Sam really a cavalier guy who was going to write a script and delete a ton of accounts because he was testing in prod? We didn't know if this was going to happen. So we found a domain controller in one of our test domains. The domain wasn't used that often, but it was used, okay? And the domain controller was having problems with replication. It is a corrupt database there, if I remember. So we had other DCs in that particular domain, so it wasn't a big issue. But we told Sam, said, okay, here's your test. You pass if you can fix replication and you document your process in terms of all the commands that you tried, everything that you went through, the research that you did, and you put it all in OneNote. We used OneNote at the time. And you said, you send me the OneNote notebook. Okay, so you get replication working, you fix the problem, but you document it. All right? Here's how you fail. You fail if users get domain not available, so authentication breaks in the domain, or you fail if you're able to fix the problem, but you don't document it. And then I gave him this little thing. I said, Sam, you can ask the DA's questions. If you have questions, go ahead and ask. So we sent Sam away. And Sam came back about 2 weeks later, hands me a OneNote notebook. He went through and he tried every single command I was hoping he would try. I had a few ideas in the back of my mind of how to fix it. And I was like, all right, Sam, this is your test. Go for it. And he went through, he tried everything. He documented all of it. And he was able to fix the problem. Now, in this case, the commands I was hoping would work didn't work. He had to demote the DC and then re-promote it. Replication started working. But Sam went through this whole process. And he asked domain admins questions. He did his own research, but he asked questions. And this was an awesome example of exactly what you should be doing, the kind of people, the caliber and the quality that you want being domain admins in your organization. Okay, we don't want vendors. Oh, let's talk about vendors. Vendors drive me nuts because they show up in your organization, they're like, I need to run this little script that needs to add user, and oh, by the way, I need domain admin in order to do it. No, you don't. Well, but I have to create a user. Okay, I'll give you an account that has the ability to create users. And they double click it as that user account, and it works. And they're like, but I thought I need domain admin. Well, you didn't. No, you didn't. Okay, so Sam's test was an important test because now that he got it, we promoted him. By the way, over 15 domains, he became a domain admin. And what this told us is that now, when Sam goes into a meeting and we're not around, we can trust him. And this being domain admin is all about trust, right? We can trust Sam because we know that the answers that he's going to give are researched, well documented. He's not afraid to ask other people. Okay, he's not afraid to do his own research, and he's going to have a sliver of humility about it, which is important. You don't need somebody in your organization who comes in and says, I wrote the LDAP RFC. Sure. These are not the kind of people that you want. Okay, testing is a proving ground for trust. It is a proving ground for trust. All right, so if somebody comes in and they think they're just, the bee's knees of Active Directory, make them prove it. You'll be thankful that you did. So number one, test your people. Number two, you would think this would be obvious. Limit the number of domain admins. Limit the number of domain admins. So in my previous job, there was 1,500 users in production, 35 domain administrators. And this is interesting. I see this face. And this scares me because I don't know if you think, wow, that's too many, or if you're like, wow, that's it. Let me tell you right now, it's too many. 35 is too many. Okay? My other job, 20,000 users across many, many domains, 5 domain administrators for all of them. Okay? This is much more of an appropriate response. Some of you still have a shocked look on your face. Okay? How can you do that? How can you only have 5 DAs? Because we support a whole gamut of security technologies. AD is just one of them. How do you do this? Well, let me tell you, every single domain admin in some capacity knows how to automate. They know how to write PowerShell code. They know how to interrogate AD programmatically. Okay, they're not just going into GUI and just dragging users around OUs. No. You can't do that. Okay, but neither can you have dozens upon dozens of DAs. Remember, every domain admin is a target. Okay, so the more DAs you have, the more risk you have. Like I said, you would think this would be terribly obvious. I really don't think so. The more people I talk to about in their AD organization, it's not that obvious. You're like, well, you mean I shouldn't put everybody in the domain admins group? And what's the problem with that? Let me tell you something. If you don't limit the number of domain admins, you will end up with domain admins like me. Okay? So, a couple jobs ago, remember the company I said there was 1,500 employees? Well, we were going through we were upgrading Windows NT and we were going to Windows 2000. And I was a stupid little kid at the time, but I was domain admin. So, I was used to the master-slave model of Windows NT, and then they bring on this multi-master system of Active Directory, and I'm like, yeah, I got this. Well, I'm in the Madison branch office, the only IT guy. So they decide to sync a domain controller in the Madison office. And me being the security conscientious person, this is how I knew I was going to be an InfoSec. All right. So me being the security conscientious person I logged on to the DC, and I'm like, I'm gonna secure this because it's not secure. So what's any security conscious person going to do? They're going to look at file shares, right? They're going to see who can access, folders and shares on the main controller. So I'm looking through and I find sysvol. I'm like, well, what the heck is this? So I right click, properties, security, authenticated users. That's everybody. Take that off. And I put myself on with full control. Let's not get stupid, right? I have to have access, right? I click apply, I go home. Yeah, you intrepid DAs in the crowd, you know what's happening. Active Directory was only too happy to replicate all those changes to all the DCs in the entire company. I come in the next morning, I shut my pager off because I'm not on call, so I come in the next morning, both my bosses are sitting here, so I don't think I told even the story in the interview. So I love you guys, really. So I come in the next morning, there's a line of people waiting for me. And they're like, Jason, they're like, we can't log in. I said, well, what's the error? They said, well, it says domain not available. I'm like, domain not available, domain not available. I have no idea. It's called the home office. So the home office called me because my name was on the ACL, and they said, Jason, did you change the perms on sysfall? I was like, well, yeah, everybody could get to it. And they're like, you know that you locked out everybody from authenticating to the domain, right? And I was like, yeah. I couldn't even make that story up. It's so horrible. So, yes, so please limit them. Please limit the number. So you've tested them, you've limited them. Number 3, let's get into some of the technical controls. Separate DA accounts from your everyday account. Okay? Raise your hand if you're already doing this. All right, less than half the room. Let's talk about this for a second. Okay? Here's what I want you to do. For those of you who did not raise your hand, I want you to log into Domain Controller with your domain admin account on Monday. Okay? I want you to create another account. So Jason1, I want you to create Jason2, or whatever your user ID is. I want you to take that account and put it in domain admins. And then I want you to go to your other account, the account that you log into your workstation with, that you log into servers with, that you log into everything with, and take that out of domain admins. Okay? And people are like, but I'm going to be the same as every other user. Yes. Yes, you are. That's the whole point of this. Okay? We don't want you to log into all these other systems with your domain admin account. Why? Because you are spraying the environment with your domain admin hash. Okay? Let's not do that. Let's restrict. You're going to see the approach that I'm going to take is we're going to take these steps to the point we're going to systematically harden the domain controller and harden your accounts. Okay, this is step number 1. You have to have separate accounts. All right? Very, very simple, very straightforward to do. And oh, by the way, you're only going to impact your domain admins. You can do this in a day or less. Okay, unless you got some kind of retarded change approval process. I'm sorry, I can't help you there. But let's say you have the authority to do this. This will go very quickly. So do it. Keep all the rest of your groups, and you got this other account that's just in domain admins. All right? Separate the account. Okay? Number 4, have a separate DA password policy. Now, the intrepid domain administrator is going to look at me, and rightly so, say, well, wait a second. The password settings are a computer configuration item in group policy. Computer config settings are propagated to computers, not to users, so I'm screwed. No, you're not. Microsoft answered this question in Windows Server 2008 and beyond and came up with fine-grained password policies. My hope is that you are applying those already to your domain admins. If you're not, please do so. It is super easy to do this. Okay, using the UI actually kind of sucks. Using PowerShell, it's impossibly easy. Okay, if you are not familiar, this shameless plug for the 80 commandlets, if you are not familiar with the 80 commandlets, take some time and get familiar with them. This is one of the methods that you can run. What is that called? New 80 fine-grained password policy. All right, so all this is doing, I'm creating this policy right here. I'm assigning a name. I took this from one of my scripts. So I'm turning on complexity. Reading this backwards, this is not helping. And then minimum password length. Pay attention to this down here. Now I have it set to 12, given the fact that password crackers are now in like the tens of billions of attempts a second. We probably should up this to like 16 or even 20 or something like that. Okay, but please do this. Very, very simple, straightforward to do. You're like, but Jason, I have 1,000 domains. Wrap it in a for each statement. For each domain in getForest.domains. You got your password policy, and then you link it to your domain admins group. Here we are again, only affecting domain administrators. This is something you can do on Monday. All right? So now, oh, by the way, here's a fun plug for this. If you have an attacker that's on your network and you have null sessions exposed in your domain controller, and they run a tool like Enum for Linux against this, they're not going to see these settings. They're going to see the settings from your default domain controller policy, or from your default domain policy. Okay, so throwing people for a loop a little bit, especially on the defense side. This is great. Okay, because now you can have 16, 20 character passwords, and if you're in an old organization, your password policy probably sucks. Okay, why? Because you have to support legacy systems. Okay, you get something like, but I have a mainframe. and I can only have a 6-character maximum on the mainframe. Makes you want to cry. So do this, and you can take care of that. Okay? Again, this is for domain admins, but you can apply the same philosophy to any elevated access group. If you could do this for something like account operators, you could do this for PKI admins. You could do this for any sensitive class of user that you happen to have. Okay, so here we go. That was step 4. Step 5. Set DA logon access restrictions to domain controllers only. Because right now, even if you've gone through the process of separating your domain admin account, and so it's not an everyday account, you might get a phone call to something like, Jason, I got this server and the trust is broken. So what do? You log on that server with your DA account, fix the trust, rejoin the domain. Okay? Or somebody says, hey, I got a vendor here and it's super critical and it's urgent, I need to install some software because they didn't have privileges. So you log in on Workstation, your domain admin account. Right? Again, you're still leaving your hashes all over the place. Microsoft gave you a beautiful little button called Logon To. Okay? This little button solves a whole host of problems. So what you do is you click that button, you put your domain controllers in there, and you click Add for every single one of them. So here's what we've done so far. Okay? You have a separate domain admin account with a separate password policy that can now only log into domain controllers. But Jason, I have to log into no, you don't. You can delegate access. Okay? Active Directory is the most delegatable system I've ever come across. Thousands upon thousands of permissions you can delegate. There is no excuses. It's not like you have admins and users. You can delegate anything in AD. Almost anything. Okay? So, the concern over having to, not being able to accomplish certain day-to-day activities can be accomplished very successfully with delegation. Okay, everybody following me on the methodology so far? How we're restricting access even more for your domain admin accounts. And oh, by the way, now we're not leaving hashes anywhere all over the place. Okay, let's go a step further. Disable cache credentials. You can do this through group policy. Okay, here's the GPO setting right here. So what's it called? Interactive logon, number of previous logons to cache, set it to 0. Now, let's think about this for a second. You can apply this to domain controllers. You can also apply this to, say, a whole class of servers. Why can you do this? And more than likely do it safely. Where are your servers located? What? On the network. Physically? Where are they located? Data center. Right? Do you ever go up to a server and be like, well, unplug it and hope that it's going to run? That doesn't happen unless it's maintenance, right? If it's maintenance, let's say you got a bad cable, you got a bad drive, you got to, reboot and take it off the network, or you got a trust problem, you're going to log in with a local admin account. Okay? You can apply the disabling of cache credentials or setting it to 0 to servers as well. Because chances are your servers are never going to come offline. What is this setting intended to allow? The logging on of cache credentials, and it's really, really, really useful for, say, remote users. It's not necessarily useful for servers. It's not really necessary for domain controllers. I think the default, when you smarter guys might know this, I think the default is it's either 10 or like 24 cache creds that Microsoft remembers by default. It's a lot. Okay? So, and when the Trust and Sec folks, when they were doing their thing, I would happen to be the AD on call, of course. And I get a phone call from the help desk. They call me up, and I swear the guy had just been out running or something because he was out of breath. He said, Jason, accounts are getting locked out all across the company. And I'm like, how many? Well, 20. I'm like, okay, do you have the IP address? He's like, yeah. So he gives me the IP address. I pull up my buddy Scott. I'm like, hey, Scott, do you recognize this IP address? He's like, yeah, that's Kennedy's box. I'm like, all right. So I'm thinking, security, it's really easy for security to get a black eye in the environment, right? So in your company, you make a change to group policy for, you change the desktop wallpaper, and people call like, my phone doesn't work, revert the policy. Security doesn't need another black eye, right? So I'm on the phone, and I know what's going on, all right? Something went awry, some passwords are getting brute force, and they crossed the policy, and now accounts are getting locked out. So I think to myself, I have to buy some time. So I tell the help desk guy, I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Why don't you send the case to the server team? So, because I don't know what that box is doing, so send it over there. So he's like, okay, hang up the phone. I jump on a domain controller, and I pull up all the locked out accounts. 300, 350, 375. I'm texting Scott, tell him to knock it off. 400, 425, and it stops at 425. Refresh, 425, refresh, 425. I'm like, okay. So I take the accounts, PowerShell magic, pipe it all to unlock AD account, all the accounts are unlocked. Help desk calls me back, once again, out of breath. It's like, Jason, the server team, they tried to get in, but all their accounts were locked out. And I'm like, that is fishy. So why don't you take that case and send it over to the threat team, Scott's team. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it sounds crazy. So send it over there. It goes over to Scott's team. Scott's team's like, it's fishy. Close the case. Yeah. So always fun to be on call when stuff like that happens. So disable cache credentials. All right. Let's talk a little bit about service accounts, because service accounts are always it's tricky business, right? Service accounts. What is one of the biggest reasons why domain admins create other domain admin service accounts? What? Whoa, yes, front row. You guys get the gold medal. They're lazy and it's easy. No offense to domain admins, but, right, lazy and easy. Okay? What are your tasks really doing? User management, group management, stuff that can be easily, and it's ridiculously easily delegated out. I can only think of 2 or 3 things. All right, maybe it's just ignorance on my part. I can only think of a couple things that require domain admin rights that you would use in a scheduled task, like IPsec policy management. You might even be able to delegate that in Server 2012. Okay, 2003, 2008, I know you had to be domain admin, but there's very, very few tasks where you actually have to be domain admin that you would want to schedule. Okay, so delegate the access. You will see me come back to delegation 10 times out of 10, because for the vast majority of tasks that you do day to day, you don't need domain admin access. You're using it because it's convenient. I totally understand, okay, but it's convenient. Let's say for whatever reason you have to have service accounts that are domain admin. Okay? Treat the task server like a DC. Okay? Implement some of the exact same controls I talked about. Might it even go so far as to say you could run the task on a DC if you knew it was safe. Okay? Because you already have the controls in place. I'm going to be careful saying that because everybody's got their own compliance and all that kind of stuff. But you have this nice restricted environment. Treat the task server like a domain controller. Service account can only log on to that server and shut off cache credentials. Okay? So again, I'm taking that same methodology and I'm applying it where it needs to be applied. All right? So that's ideal service accounts. Just a little caveat. I had a buddy of mine do some testing on this. For Server 2012, if you shut off cache credentials, tasks stop running, which I thought was really interesting. You go out to the history and schedule tasks and it throws an error. You can fix this. I just want to, for posterity's sake, you can fix this on this particular example. I got something running as lab. That's a domain admin account. By default, it's running as this, run only when logged on, run whether user is logged on or not. You set it to that, problem goes away. Okay? That's how we personally deal with service accounts. Number 8, I talked about Microsoft Security Compliance Manager. If you have never used this tool, Google it. Because how many times as a domain administrator have people come up to you and said, we are the server team, the desktop team, they come up to you, they're like, we're rolling out Windows 8. We're rolling out Windows Server 2012. And we need a group policy, and we don't know what to do. If you're like most domain admins, you have a whole crap ton of other things to do, but yet this is now taking priority. Why? Because you have to get it right. All right? Otherwise, they're going to roll with no security, and then trying to retrofit security is always a huge pain. Okay, so you have to get it right. Find this tool, download it, install it, and run it. You can only see part of it, and I apologize. I know the font's really small. Over on your left, what you're seeing is a list of operating systems, and more importantly, roles for those operating systems. You got the DC role, you got the Exchange role, you got the member server role. Okay, and then over to the right, you see a list of group policy settings. You see what Microsoft recommends for security, and then you can specify what you want that to be. And what you can't see all the way over to the right is a little gray bar that says export to CSV, export to XLSX, export to INF, and then you can import it. Okay? So, an outstanding tool. I recently used this tool for a Server 2012 rollout. They can even, in that exact same scenario, they're like, we're rolling out Server 2012 in like a week. And you're the security guy, so give us some security. All right, here you go. I made it as impossible as I could. I said, all right, run with this for a little bit. Yeah, like UAC was turned up to the max. Nobody could install anything. So, so you start hard, you start tight, and then loosen it up, right? So go find that tool. I want to give you a quick word about null sessions. I imagine everybody knows what this is. They all know about the vulnerability, so I'm not going to waste your time describing it, other than to say it's an unauthenticated session directed to your domain controller. When we had to deal with this, it was concerning because of the age of our organization. And here's what I mean by that. Chances are, if you work in a large enterprise, and you work in an old enterprise, it is entirely possible that you are going to encounter bits of code that are using null sessions legitimately. Okay? This occurred in our environment without us knowing about it. Now, you can go into group policy and just shut off null sessions. It's 3 or 4 different settings. You turn it off. Okay? If we had done that, we would have broken functionality in our environment. And one of my concerns for all of you is that you all know you should shut it off. If you have it running and you haven't shut it off, I want to give you just a quick snippet of PowerShell code that will show you and enumerate null sessions in your environment. Okay, so that way, before you go turn it off, you can go see where it's being used. Can you guys even see that? I apologize if you can't. All this is we're doing a simple WMI query of all the various domain controllers, saying, hey, give me back all your sessions where user equals quote quote, where there's nothing there. In the blue box, in the PowerShell box, that is me connected with my Kali box. Okay. On the blog post on the bottom, I wrote up a little more about how to do this more in depth and about what this means. So feel free to go out and check that out. But yeah, grab this code snippet, use it. It's helpful. That way you don't have to shut off null sessions and risk breaking functionality. Okay, like I said, this is enterprise specific. Any red team, it's easy for the red team to exploit your null sessions, throw it in report. You get stuck with the report and you're like, now what do I do? Okay, because you can't break the business. Okay, blue team has to serve the business, right? So, anyways, there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. The last thing, I want you, as a domain administrator, as an EA or PK admin or whatever you are, I want you to consider getting offensive security training. And I don't necessarily, this kind of goes to the purple team, but I think it goes a step beyond that. The whole concept behind the purple team is that red and blue have to work closer together. Okay, as a blue team member doing Active Directory security, I want you to consider getting with a company like Offensive Security. Or I had started with CH, and I started, went to CBT, and then I took OSCP. Late, here's the part. Sorry, the EC Council, if you're in the room, but whatever. So, what's that? That's probably sadly true. Okay, but it's the only way to really understand what you're up against, is not just to think you think like an attacker, but to actually know what attackers are doing in your environment. I can't describe to you the ginormous light bulb that went on when I had 2 monitors in front of me, and on this side was Kali, and on this side was a lab domain controller. Because if you have a setting like this in your environment, okay, network access, allow anonymous SID name translation, that is one setting in your group policy security settings among dozens, hundreds of the various settings. If you're like me, you probably don't have time to research every single one to know what it does. All right, but if you go through some of this training and you get to use specific tools, this is me running a GNU for Linux on my domain controller. Okay, that setting, set to not defined, means enabled. You are allowing access. And oh, by the way, that's a fully patched 2008 domain controller. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what the 2012 out-of-the-box setting is. All right, but that's me running a GNU for Linux, and that's just doing grid cycling against my domain. You think null sessions might be turned off by default? Not necessarily, okay? Because I'm making use of a null session RPC right here in order to do that. Okay, you set this to disable. And now you go back and run the same tool again, and you get access denied. To see this in action will give you a much, much greater understanding of the actual risk in your environment, okay, that attackers are posing against your Active Directory every day, and you don't even necessarily know it. Because like I said, before when you're domain admin doing domain admin stuff, the thought that a target is over here, put it right here. Okay, go get the training, use the same tools and techniques that attackers are using and pen testers are using in your environment, and see how it affects your domain. And I promise the light bulb will go on in a very, very real way. So it was last year sometime, I think Chris Gates, he tweeted this out. You guys see this? He was at a CCDC competition. And this was oh shoot, did it get cut off? It said Windows Security Checklist. This is the blue team in a CCDC competition. This is their Windows Security Checklist. So, set the usernames, write the passwords on a piece of paper, change passwords, disable local guest and administrator on all machines. There it is. And that's basically about it. I saw this and I wanted to find these blue team people and just wrap my arms around them and give them a hug and say, we can do better. It's going to be okay. We can do better. So one of the things I did, I knew I was not going to have time to demo this, but I put together a very quick, kind of stupid, simple PowerShell script that I called domain lockdown. Just a quick screenshot of it. All this is doing is the specific checks that I just told you about. So check out the middle section, looking at domain admin count, looking at whether or not they can log on to other systems besides domain controllers, enumerating null sessions. All right, and then I added a couple of remediate flags. This one is running in Death Blossom mode. If you're a child of the 80s, you'll know what I'm talking about. Oh, come on. I thought that would be great. Anybody know what Death Blossom is? What? Yes! Last Starfighter. Thank you so much. Okay? Best movie ever. Yeah. Anyways. So the remediation that's taking place down here, this is all the stuff almost all the stuff that I was talking about. Okay, creating password policy objects, ensuring that your domain admins are segregated and can only log on to domain controllers. And then I took the Microsoft best practices GPO for Windows 2008 servers, wrapped it up, dropped it in the script, and this will actually apply it, if you are brave enough, to your domain controllers OU. Test it. Don't do it in prod. Before testing it, test it, test it. Test it. Okay? So, that's it. That's really all I had. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, you can go find it out here. Any questions? There are a few topics that I wanted to get to that I wasn't able to fit in this talk. Go back a slide. Does this scale? Yes, sir. Yes. What permissions are actually being used? So just a follow-up question, are you sure the service accounts are still logging in? Like net user, service account / domain, it should tell you that the last logon time? So that's one good way. So when I've had to deal with that exact same problem. So you set up a service account, it gets used for whatever application, and then you think the application might not be being used anymore, but you're not entirely sure. How do you go about it? A couple of things that I do is number one, make sure the account's still logging in. Net user, user ID / domain. It will give you the last logon time. Okay, if that last logon time is greater than 30 days to account for things like batch processes and stuff like that, I'll disable it. Won't delete it, I'll disable it and see what happens. There isn't a whole lot more you can do with that. You can use PowerShell to enumerate like OU permissions and stuff like that to see what's been granted access. But if it's obscure, I'll disable the account. So people will complain. Oh. Okay, so the question was, how can you tell what rights you need to delegate to the account? It's obviously going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the task is doing. So if you had a task that was creating user accounts, okay, and that's what this app was doing, okay, that's all available in the delegation wizard. If you looked at the delegation wizard, so shoot, I wish I had a lab VM. What you can do is pull up Active Directory users and computers. Find an OU. Well, like I said, I'm giving an overly simplistic answer regarding the creation of accounts. Right-click that OU, delegate control, and then you can pick which objects you want to be allowed access. So for instance, you select the user class, you select the process ID, and then you say create, delete, modify, read, any one of a gazillion different permissions that you can assign in that delegation wizard. So what you have to do, the first thing, number one, find out what access is required. And number two, right-click delegate control on the OU. You can, but it's a little bit more of a difficult process, and I'd probably open that up to the room. So the question was if can you tell what access is required? When I've been put in that situation, I use a tool like Procmon and see where I get access denied. And really, so if I were you, I would kick the vendor in the balls and be like, you have to tell me. This is your product. I don't know your product. You tell me. You know. Yes, reconsider. They're like, I don't know what permission needs. Give me enterprise admin. Get out of here. No. Yes, sir. Yeah. You don't have to yell at me. The vendor doesn't know? Say it again. Yell at me. Yes. Yeah. So one thing I will let you know, vendors love to say, I need domain admin, because it's easy. That's exactly what they're going to tell you. They're going to be like, I need domain admin. Why? Because I need domain admin to create some objects and stuff. Oh, absolutely. And if you have to do an audit, the first thing to do is to check when the last time that account is logged on. You might find it's been like 6 months. Disable it. Any questions? Not you. Troll. Resistance to making the change? So that's an interesting question. It's going to depend on how political the organization is. So if the report gets issued and the organization is like, well, this gives security a black eye, so we're not going to show it to anybody. Nobody's going to be benefited by that. Okay? If the report comes out and everybody sees it, or at least the people that are impacted, like, for instance, domain admins, the resistance that was encountered, once people came to that conclusion, be like, wait a second, my account was targeted, that changes things. So, I have 2 minutes left. I'll tell you the story real quick. So, it's lots of fun. So, after the pen test was done, we were wrapping up 2 weeks. Scott told me that Dave had domain admin, so I pulled Dave up on Twitter, and I'm like, hey, I know you got one of our accounts. Whose account did you get? There's only 5 of us. Whose account did you get? He's like, I don't want to tell you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, whose account did you get? He's like, I feel really bad about it. I couldn't tell if he was just trolling me or what. I'm like, we are the customer. Whose account did you get? He told me the account, he's a friend of mine, and he said, I feel so bad. And I'm like, Dave, this is what we paid you for. Why do you feel bad? He said, I'm not going to sleep at night. I said, what's the problem? He told me the password. The password was DerbyCon Rocks. It's not the password anymore. I was like, you sleep well, son. You sleep well, Dave. Yeah, he's not going to sleep well. That's it. That is all I had. Huge thank you.